The grand hall of the Zarathi Empire stretched endlessly, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of 3 moons. Ambassador Krelix stood before the Emperor, his scales shifting from deep purple to pale violet with nervousness. Behind him, the human diplomat Marcus Chen waited quietly, his plain black suit a stark contrast to the elaborate robes of the alien court. "Your Imperial Majesty," Krelix began, his forearms folded in the traditional gesture of respect. "The humans have agreed to our terms. They will share their military training methods in exchange for our shield technology." Emperor Vorthak's massive form shifted on his throne. His daughter, Princess Lyra, watched from the shadows. She was different from other Zarathi, smaller, more delicate, with scales that shimmered like starlight. The court whispered she was weak, unsuited for the harsh realities of their warrior culture. "And what of their strange request?" the Emperor rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. Krelix's scales paled further. They wish for a cultural exchange, Your Majesty. One of their people to live among us, and one of ours among them, for 1 year." The court erupted in hisses and clicks of disapproval. No Zarathi had ever lived among the primitive humans. It was unthinkable. Marcus stepped forward, his movements careful and respectful. "Your Majesty, we believe understanding between our peoples is as important as any technology. We offer our finest teachers and warriors for this exchange." The Emperor's 6 eyes narrowed. He had ruled for 200 years, survived countless assassination attempts, and crushed 3 rebellions. But his greatest failure sat in the shadows, his daughter, who couldn't even lift a battle blade. "I will agree," the Emperor said slowly, silencing the court. "But I choose who goes." His gaze found Lyra. "My daughter will go to Earth." The silence was deafening. Princess Lyra's scales flashed white with shock. The courtiers couldn't hide their satisfaction. The weak princess would finally be gone. Marcus bowed deeply. "We would be honored to welcome Princess Lyra to Earth." Later that night, Lyra confronted her father in his private chambers. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Why send me away?" The Emperor's expression softened for just a moment. "Because here, you will always be seen as weak. Perhaps among the humans, you will find what you cannot find here." "You're ashamed of me," Lyra said, her scales dimming with sadness. "No," Vorthak replied. "I am giving you a chance. The humans are different. They find strength in strange places. Maybe they can teach you what I could not." 3 days later, Lyra stood at the boarding ramp of the human ship. She carried only a small bag. Zarathi owned little, believing possessions made one weak. Her father didn't come to see her off. Only Ambassador Krelix was there, looking uncomfortable. "Remember, Princess," he said, "you represent the Empire. Try not to embarrass us further." Lyra's scales flushed pink with anger, but she said nothing. She had learned long ago that words were wasted on those who had already made up their minds. Marcus waited for her inside the ship, smiling warmly. "Welcome aboard, Princess. I know this must be difficult." "Difficulty is nothing new to me," Lyra replied, following him through corridors that seemed impossibly small after the vast spaces of the palace. "Your quarters are here," Marcus said, opening a door. The room was tiny by Zarathi standards, but something about it felt cozy. "I know it's not what you're used to." "It's perfect," Lyra said, surprising them both. The journey to Earth took 3 weeks. Lyra spent most of it in the ship's library, accessing Earth's database. She read about human history, fascinated by how they had survived despite being physically weaker than almost every other species in the galaxy. They couldn't see in the dark like Zarathi, couldn't breathe underwater like the Aquari, couldn't fly like the Aviacs, yet they had reached the stars. "How?" she asked Marcus one day over dinner. "How did your species survive?" Marcus chuckled. "We're stubborn, and we're good at using tools. What we lack in natural weapons, we make up for in creativity." "My people would call that cheating," Lyra said. "And that's why we're having this exchange," Marcus replied, "to show that there are different kinds of strength." When they finally arrived at Earth, Lyra pressed her face against the viewport. The planet was blue and green, swirling with white clouds. It looked fragile, nothing like the harsh red deserts of Zerath. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "Wait until you see it up close," Marcus said. They landed at a facility in Japan, chosen for its blend of tradition and technology. Lyra was introduced to her host family, the Takahashi clan, who ran a martial arts school that had been in their family for 15 generations. Grandfather Takahashi was ancient by human standards, his face lined with wrinkles. But when he moved, it was with a grace that reminded Lyra of water flowing over stones. "Welcome, Princess," he said in accented galactic standard. "We are honored to have you." The house was strange, walls made of paper, floors covered in woven mats. Lyra had to duck through doorways, and she kept forgetting to remove her shoes. The family was patient with her mistakes, which was more kindness than she had ever known at home. On her first morning, she was awakened at dawn by the sound of people training in the courtyard. Through the paper walls, she could see shadows moving in perfect synchronization. "Would you like to watch?" asked Yuki, the granddaughter her age, who had been assigned as her guide. Lyra nodded, following Yuki outside. 20 students moved through a series of movements, their bodies flowing like a single organism. It was nothing like Zerathi combat, which was all force and fury. "What are they doing?" Lyra asked. "Kata," Yuki explained. "Practice forms. Each movement has been perfected over centuries." "But they're so slow," Lyra said. "In real combat, speed is everything." Grandfather Takahashi appeared beside them, moving so quietly Lyra hadn't heard him approach. "Speed without control is chaos," he said. "Would you like to learn?" Lyra's scales shifted uncomfortably. I'm not good at combat. I'm too weak." The old man studied her with eyes that seemed to see through her. "Weak? You are 7 feet tall and have 4 arms. I think perhaps you have been taught to see strength incorrectly." He led her to the training area. The students made room, trying not to stare at the alien princess. Lyra felt their curiosity but no mockery, which was new. "First lesson," Grandfather said. "Stand." Lyra stood, her 4 arms hanging awkwardly. "No," he said gently. "Stand with intention. Feel the ground beneath you. You are not just occupying space. You are choosing to be here." It sounded like nonsense, but Lyra tried. She focused on her feet, feeling the cool morning air, the solid earth beneath the mats. "Better," Grandfather said. "Now, watch." He moved through a simple form, each gesture precise and controlled. Despite his age and size, there was power in every movement. "Your turn," he said. Lyra tried to copy him, her 4 arms making it complicated. She felt clumsy, foolish. On Zerath, training meant hitting things until they broke or you did. "Don't force it," Yuki said. "Flow. Flow." Lyra had never been taught to flow, but she tried, and something strange happened. With 4 arms, she could create patterns humans couldn't. What looked clumsy at first began to take on its own grace. "Interesting," Grandfather murmured. "Very interesting." After training, Lyra was exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical effort. Her mind felt stretched, challenged in ways it never had been. "This is just the beginning," Yuki told her over breakfast. "Grandfather sees something in you." "What could he possibly see?" Lyra asked bitterly. "On my world, I'm a failure." "Good thing you're not on your world," Yuki said simply. The days fell into a routine. Morning training, afternoon lessons in human culture and history, evening meditation. Lyra learned to eat with chopsticks, easier with 4 hands once she got the hang of it, to sit properly on cushions, to find stillness in movement. But it was the combat training that transformed her. Human martial arts weren't about overpowering opponents, they were about redirecting force, using an enemy's strength against them. For someone who had always been told she was too weak, it was a revelation. "Your people fight like storms," Grandfather told her one day, "all fury and noise. But have you ever noticed that water can carve through stone, not through force, but through persistence and finding the right path?" He demonstrated a throw, using Lyra's own momentum to send her flying. She landed hard but got up immediately, scales bright with excitement. "Show me again," she said. He did, and this time she felt it, the moment when her forward motion became her downfall. It was physics, pure and simple, but it felt like magic. "My father would say this is trickery," she said. "Your father has never had to fight someone twice his size," Grandfather replied. "Humans have always had to be clever. It's not weakness, it's adaptation." As weeks turned to months, Lyra began to change, not just in her fighting style, but in how she carried herself. She stopped hunching to seem smaller. She learned to use all 4 arms in combat, creating patterns and locks that no human could escape. The other students began seeking her out as a training partner. Her reach and extra limbs made her challenging in ways that improved their own skills. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt useful. One evening, she sat with the Takahashi family watching the sunset. The sky turned colors she had never seen on Zerath, pink and gold and purple. "I've been thinking," she said quietly. "On my world, we have a saying, 'The weak die so the strong survive.' But here, the strong help the weak become stronger. Why? Because humans learned long ago that we survive together or not at all," Grandfather said. "The lone wolf dies, but the pack survives. You have been taught that needing others is weakness. We believe it is the greatest strength." Lyra's scales shimmered with an emotion she couldn't name. "My father sent me away because he thought I was an embarrassment." "Or," Yuki suggested gently, "he sent you here because he knew we could teach you what he couldn't." That night, Lyra stood in the courtyard practicing forms under Earth's single moon. Her movements were fluid now, each of her 4 arms moving in perfect harmony. She was still the same Lyra who had left Zerath, but also completely different. A message came from home the next day, the first communication since she had left. It was from Ambassador Krelix, asking for a progress report. Lyra stared at the screen for a long time before responding. What could she say? That she was learning to fight by not fighting? That humans measured strength in kindness and persistence rather than force? That she felt more at home in this tiny house than she ever had in the palace? In the end, she sent a simple message. Learning much. Humans are not what we expected. She didn't mention that she was becoming something unexpected, too. Something that was neither fully Zerathi nor human, but perhaps stronger than both. As she returned to her training, Lyra didn't notice the small camera drone that had been watching from the garden. On Zerath, her father sat in his private chambers, watching his daughter move with a grace and confidence he had never seen before. Perhaps, Emperor Vorthak murmured to himself, I chose better than I knew. The seasons changed on Earth, something Lyra had never experienced. The cherry blossoms came, covering the dojo in pink petals. She trained among them, 4 arms weaving through falling flowers, and felt something she had never felt before. She felt powerful. Not the raw, crushing power of Zerathi warriors, but something deeper, more lasting, the power of choice, of discipline, of finding strength in what others called weakness. 6 months into her stay, a message arrived that would change everything. A trade ship had been attacked by pirates near the Sol system. The ship carried both human and Zarathi crew. The pirates were demanding ransom, threatening to kill the hostages. "The Earth Defense Force is mobilizing," Marcus told her, having arrived at the dojo with the news. "But the pirates have Zarathi military-grade shields. Our weapons can't penetrate them." Lyra stood slowly, her scales shifting to a color Yuki had never seen before, a deep, steady gold. "Then perhaps," Lyra said, "it's time to show them what happens when you combine Zarathi strength with human wisdom." She looked at Grandfather Takahashi, who nodded slowly. "Your training is not complete," he warned. "But then again, training never truly is." Lyra's 4 hands clenched and unclenched, not in anger but in preparation. 6 months ago, she would have cowered at the thought of combat. Now she felt ready. "Take me to your defense force," she told Marcus. "I have some ideas." As she left the dojo, still wearing her training clothes, Yuki called out, "Lyra, remember, flow like water." Lyra turned back, her scales shimmering. "No," she said with a smile that would have terrified her father. "I'll flow like myself." The timid princess who had arrived on Earth was gone. In her place stood something new, a warrior who understood that true strength came not from what you were born with, but from what you chose to become. And she was just getting started. The Earth Defense Force Command Center buzzed with activity. Screens showed the hijacked trade vessel hanging in space, surrounded by 3 pirate ships. The criminals had chosen their position well, just outside Earth's jurisdiction, but close enough to be a threat. Admiral Sarah Chen looked up as Marcus entered with Lyra. The princess had changed into a modified combat suit that accommodated her 4 arms, but she still wore the cloth belt from the dojo around her waist. "Princess," the Admiral said carefully, "we appreciate your offer to help, but this is a military situation." "With respect, Admiral," Lyra replied, studying the tactical displays, "you're thinking like humans fighting humans. These pirates have Zarathi shields. You need someone who understands both." She moved to the holographic display, her 4 hands manipulating the data with surprising skill. "See these energy signatures? The shields pulse every 3.7 seconds to dissipate heat. It's a weakness most Zarathi don't even know about, because our weapons fire continuously." The Admiral leaned forward. "But our weapons don't." "Exactly." Lyra's scales shifted to the golden color Yuki had seen. "You've been trying to overwhelm the shields with force, but what if we use precision instead?" She pulled up weapon specifications, her mind racing through calculations. 6 months of meditation had taught her to see patterns everywhere, even in shield harmonics. "If we time our shots to hit during the pulse window, we can slip through," she continued, "but it requires perfect coordination." "The margin for error would be milliseconds," the weapons officer protested. "No human could react that fast." Lyra smiled, an expression she had learned from her human friends. "Good thing I'm not human, and I've been training with Master Takahashi. Do you know what reaction time is required to block a strike you can't see coming?" The Admiral made a decision. "What do you need?" "A small team," Lyra said. "Your best pilots, and someone needs to get me onto that pirate command ship." "That's suicide," Marcus said. "Princess, you're not a warrior." Lyra's 4 hands moved through a combat form, so fast the humans could barely track the motion. "No," she agreed. "I'm something else. I'm what happens when Zarathi strength meets human innovation." Within an hour, a plan took shape. It was audacious, mixing human tactics with Zarathi technology in ways that made both species' military advisors nervous, but it was their best shot. Lyra stood in the hangar bay with the strike team, 12 of Earth's finest pilots and Marines. They looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. She was still the alien princess, untested in real combat. "I know what you're thinking," she said, addressing them directly. 6 months ago, you would have been right. I was weak by my people's standards. Useless. Her scales flickered through several colors. But humans taught me something my people never understood. Strength isn't about what you're born with. It's about what you choose to do with what you have. She gestured to the tactical display. The pirates expect us to attack with brute force because that's what Zarathi always do. They expect me to hide because that's what weak princesses do. Let's disappoint them. Sergeant Tom Rodriguez, a veteran of dozen operations, stepped forward. With respect, Princess, knowing fancy martial arts isn't the same as combat. When the shooting starts, Lyra moved. One moment she was standing still. The next she had Rodriguez's sidearm in one of her hands, his combat knife in another, and her remaining two hands positioned to strike. She hadn't hurt him, but the demonstration was clear. Grandfather Takahashi taught me that combat is chess at the speed of thought, she said, returning his weapons. Every move has a counter. Every strength can become a weakness. The pirates think they know Zarathi. They've never met one trained by humans. Rodriguez grinned. Ma'am, I take it back. This might actually work. The assault began at 0300 Earth time. 3 squadrons of fighters launched. Their attack patterns designed by Lyra to exploit the shield weakness she had identified. She rode in a stealth shuttle with the Marine insertion team, her hearts beating in the syncopated rhythm her people experienced during stress. 2 minutes to contact, the pilot announced. Lyra closed her eyes, centering herself as grandfather had taught her. Fear was natural, he had said. It sharpened the senses, quickened reactions. The key was not to let it control you. Princess, Rodriguez said over the comm, you sure about this? Once we're on that ship, there's no retreat, Lyra finished. I know. My people have a saying, victory or death. Humans taught me a better one, victory through adaptation. The pirates never saw them coming. While the fighters drew attention with perfectly timed strikes that slipped through shield pulses, the stealth shuttle attached to the command ship's hull. Lyra was first through the breach, moving with a fluidity that seemed impossible for someone her size. The pirate crew was a mix of species, all armed and dangerous, but they were used to opponents who fought predictably. Lyra flowed through them like water through rocks, using their own momentum against them. 4 arms meant she could defend and attack simultaneously, creating patterns of movement that left opponents off balance and confused. Port corridor clear, she reported, not even breathing hard. How? Rodriguez asked, seeing a dozen unconscious pirates. You didn't even use a weapon. Humans taught me that everything is a weapon, Lyra replied, gesturing to the walls. The deck plating, even the pirates' own equipment. Even empty space, if you know how to use it. They fought their way to the bridge, Lyra leading with a combination of Zarathi strength and human technique that left the Marines struggling to keep up. She seemed to know where attacks would come from before they happened, a skill honed by countless hours of blindfolded training at the dojo. The pirate captain was a Zarathi renegade named Kraxos, scarred from 100 battles. He laughed when he saw her. The weak princess, he sneered. Your father's shame, come to die with dignity at last? I've come to teach you something, Lyra replied calmly. My father was wrong. So are you. Kraxos attacked with the brutal efficiency of a Zarathi warrior. On her homeworld, Lyra would have been crushed in seconds, but Earth had changed her. She didn't meet his strength with strength. Instead, she redirected it, controlled it, turned it into his weakness. The fight was brief, but decisive. Kraxos ended up on the deck, Lyra's foot on his throat, wondering how a princess he could have broken with one hand had defeated him without throwing a single punch. How? He gasped. Because I learned what you never did, Lyra said. Strength without wisdom is just destruction. The humans understand this. That's why they'll outlast us all. With the command ship captured, the other pirates quickly surrendered. The hostages were freed, the stolen cargo recovered. But more importantly, word spread through the galaxy. The weak Zarathi princess had become something unprecedented. Back on Earth, the Takahashi family welcomed her return with quiet joy. Grandfather studied her carefully, noting the new confidence in her bearing. "You did well," he said simply. "I used everything you taught me," Lyra replied. "But I think I finally understand the most important lesson." "Oh?" She knelt on the mat, all four arms arranged in a gesture of respect she had created herself, blending human and Zarathi customs. "True strength comes from understanding yourself. Not what others say you are, but what you choose to be." The old master smiled. "Now you are ready for advanced training." The news of Lyra's actions reached Zarath within days. The royal court was in uproar. The weak princess, defeating veteran warriors, using alien techniques that violated every principle of Zarathi combat. It was inconceivable. Emperor Vorthak watched the security footage in silence. His advisors ranted about dishonor, about corruption of Zarathi purity. He ignored them all, studying his daughter's movements. She fought like nothing he had ever seen, fluid, adaptive, intelligent. "Summon Ambassador Krelix," he commanded. When the ambassador arrived, the emperor had only one question. "These humans who trained her, could they train others?" Krelix shifted nervously. "Theoretically, yes, but your majesty, surely you don't approve of these methods." "I sent my daughter away because I thought she was weak," Vorthak said quietly. "I see now that I was the weak one, too blind to see strength that didn't match my expectations." He stood, his massive frame casting shadows. "Arrange for more exchanges. I want 100 of our best warriors to train with the humans." "But the court—" "The court can adapt or be left behind," the emperor growled. "My daughter has shown us the future. We can embrace it or be crushed by it." On Earth, Lyra received her father's message with surprise. He had never admitted to being wrong before. The fact that he was doing so now, publicly, would shake Zarathi society to its core. "Will you go back?" Yuki asked. They were sitting in the garden watching cherry blossoms fall. In 3 months, Lyra's official exchange would end. "I don't know," Lyra admitted. "On Zarath, I'll always be the princess who abandoned our ways. Here I'm just Lyra." "You're more than that," Marcus said, joining them. "You're proof that our species can learn from each other, that we're stronger together than apart." A new message arrived, this one from the Earth Defense Force. They were offering her a position, not as a soldier, but as a bridge between cultures. Training others in the fusion of human and Zarathi techniques she had pioneered. "They want me to teach," Lyra said, amazed. "Me, the failed princess." "You're not a failed anything," Grandfather Takahashi said firmly. "You're the first of something new, and the galaxy needs more like you." Lyra made her decision. She would stay on Earth, at least for now. But she would also return to Zarath periodically, bringing human teachers with her. The exchange program would expand, creating a new generation of warriors who understood that strength came in many forms. The pirates had been just the beginning. Word of Lyra's unique abilities spread, and soon other threats emerged to test her. A terrorist cell using stolen Zarathi technology. A rogue AI that had learned to predict traditional combat patterns. Each challenge required her to evolve, to blend her two worlds in new ways. She established a training center near the Takahashi Dojo, where humans and Zarathi could learn together. The first class was small, just 20 students from each species. They were suspicious of each other at first. The Zarathi, contemptuous of human weakness, the humans intimidated by Zarathi size and strength. Lyra stood before them on the first day, no longer the timid princess who had arrived on Earth. "You think you know strength?" she told them. You're wrong. All of you. Strength isn't what you're born with or what weapons you carry. It's what you build, together. She demonstrated, having the largest Zarathi warrior attack her with full force. Using his own power against him, she sent him flying with minimal effort. Then she had the smallest human try the same technique, showing how it worked regardless of size. This is just the beginning, she said. Humans will teach you to think, to flow, to find victory in unexpected places. Zarathi will teach you endurance, determination, and how to channel raw power. Together, you'll become something neither species has seen before. The training was hard. Zarathi warriors struggled with meditation, finding stillness almost painful. Humans pushed themselves to physical limits, trying to match Zarathi endurance. But slowly, they began to change. The Zarathi learned that yielding could be stronger than resisting. The humans discovered reserves of strength they never knew they had. And in the fusion of their techniques, something revolutionary emerged. One night, 6 months into the program, Lyra found a Zarathi warrior named Torval practicing human kata in the moonlight. His movements were still rough, but she could see him trying to find the flow. "Why?" she asked. "Last week you called this dancing for weaklings." Torval's scales flushed with embarrassment. "Because today, Kenji threw me 7 times. A human half my size, and each time I helped him do it with my own strength." He continued the form, improving slightly. "If he can do that, what could I do if I learned?" That was the breakthrough. Not forcing change, but inspiring it. Showing by example that there were no limits except those we placed on ourselves. News of the program's success reached the highest levels of both governments. The Earth Council voted to expand funding. The Zarathi Emperor himself announced he would visit Earth, the first time a Zarathi ruler had left the homeworld in 1,000 years. "Are you nervous?" Yuki asked as they prepared for his arrival. "Terrified," Lyra admitted. "I haven't seen my father since he sent me away. I'm not the daughter he remembers." "No," Grandfather Takahashi agreed, entering the room. "You're the daughter he hoped you could become, even if he didn't know it himself." The Emperor's ship arrived with full ceremony, but Vorthak surprised everyone by dismissing most of his guard. He came to the training center with only a small escort, his massive frame making even the largest building seem small. Lyra met him at the entrance, unsure how to greet the father who had exiled her. But Vorthak spoke first. "Daughter," he said, his voice carrying emotions Zarathi rarely expressed. "Show me what you've learned." What followed was the most important demonstration of Lyra's life, not just of techniques or combat skills, but of transformation. She showed him the students, human and Zarathi training together. She demonstrated how human philosophy could enhance Zarathi strength. She proved that adaptation wasn't weakness, but the ultimate survival trait. At the end, Vorthak stood in the center of the training hall, surrounded by warriors of both species. "I was wrong," he announced. "Not just about my daughter, but about strength itself. We have clung to old ways while the galaxy changed around us. No more." He turned to Lyra, and for the first time in her life, she saw pride in all 6 of his eyes. "You will return to Zerath," he said, "not as the weak princess, but as something new, a teacher, a bridge, a future I was too blind to see." "I'll need help," Lyra said. "Human teachers, and students willing to change." "You'll have them," Vorthak promised. "We'll start with volunteers, but I suspect once they see what you've become, we'll have more students than we can handle." He was right. Within a year, the exchange program had expanded to include 12 worlds. Species that had been enemies learned from each other. Combat techniques evolved, becoming less about destruction and more about understanding. But it was more than just fighting. The program sparked cultural exchanges, scientific collaboration, even interspecies friendships that would have been impossible before, all because one weak princess had been sent away in shame and returned as something unprecedented. On the anniversary of her arrival on Earth, Lyra stood where it had all began, in the Takahashi Dojo courtyard. She was preparing to return to Zarath for an extended stay, to establish the first official human-style training center there. "You've come far," Grandfather said, watching her practice forms that blended both cultures seamlessly. "I had good teachers," Lyra replied, "and I was desperate enough to listen." "Desperation can be a gift," the old master observed. "It opens us to possibilities we would otherwise reject." Yuki appeared with a wrapped package. "For your journey," she said. Inside was a belt, woven with techniques from both Earth and Zarath. Worked into the pattern were words in both languages: strength through unity, victory through understanding. "We thought you should have something that represents who you've become," Yuki explained. "Not fully human or Zarathi, but something better." Lyra's scales shimmered with emotion. "I'll wear it with honor." As her ship prepared to depart, crowds gathered. Humans and Zarathi, along with representatives from other species who had joined the program. They came to see off not a princess or a warrior, but a symbol of what was possible when cultures merged instead of clashed. Standing at the boarding ramp, Lyra looked back at the world that had transformed her. Earth still seemed fragile compared to Zarath, but she now understood that fragility could be its own form of strength. Like water wearing away stone, humans had worn away her preconceptions and rebuilt her into something stronger. "Ready?" Marcus asked. He would be accompanying her, part of the first official human delegation to Zarath. "I've been ready since the day I arrived," Lyra said. "I just didn't know it." As the ship lifted off, she thought about the pirates who had inadvertently started her transformation from student to teacher. They had expected to face a weak princess or traditional warriors. Instead, they had faced something new, something that would reshape the galaxy's understanding of strength. The unstoppable force wasn't raw power or advanced weapons. It was the willingness to change, to learn, to become more than what you were born to be. And Lyra was just getting started. The return to Zarath was nothing like Lyra had imagined. When she had left, the spaceport had been empty except for guards. Now, thousands gathered to see the princess who had defeated pirates and transformed warriors. Some scales showed curiosity, others suspicion, but all watched with intense focus. "They're not here to welcome me," Lyra told Marcus as they descended the ramp. "They're here to test me." She was right. Before they even cleared the spaceport, a massive Zarathi warrior blocked their path. General Crone, her father's military commander, towered over even other Zarathi. His scales were scarred from countless battles, and his 6 eyes held nothing but contempt. "So the failed princess returns," he growled. "With human tricks and alien ideas. You disgrace our traditions." Lyra stood calmly, her 4 arms relaxed at her sides. The crowd pressed closer, sensing confrontation. "General Crone," she said clearly, "I offer you the respect due to your rank and experience, but traditions that don't help us grow are chains, not strengths." "Pretty words from a weakling who needed humans to teach her to fight," Crone spat. "I challenge you. Here. Now. Show these people what human wisdom looks like against true Zarathi power." Marcus stepped forward, but Lyra raised one hand to stop him. She had expected this. On Zarath, everything was settled through combat. If she wanted to teach, first she had to prove she was worth learning from. "I accept," she said simply. "Standard rules?" "No rules," Crone snarled. "Just victory or defeat." The crowd formed a circle. Emperor Vorthak watched from a balcony above, making no move to intervene. This was Zarathi way. Earn your place or lose it. Crone attacked immediately, using his massive size and 4 centuries of combat experience. On Zerath, he was legendary, undefeated in formal challenges. He moved like an avalanche, all-crushing force and inevitable destruction. But Lyra had faced avalanches before, in the form of enthusiastic human students who didn't know their own strength. She flowed around his attacks, never meeting force with force. Each time Crone struck, he hit empty air. Each time he grabbed, she wasn't there. "Stand and fight!" he roared, frustration mounting. "I am fighting," Lyra replied calmly, redirecting another charge that sent him stumbling. "Just not the way you expect." The crowd murmured. They had never seen anything like this. Zerathi combat was about dominance, overwhelming your opponent. But Lyra seemed to be everywhere and nowhere, using Crone's own power against him. Then she began to strike. Not with the crushing blows Zerathi favored, but with precise touches to pressure points human martial artists had mapped over millennia. Points that worked even better on Zerathi physiology with their complex nervous system. Crone's left arms went numb. Then his right legs lost coordination. He swung wildly, but Lyra guided his movements, turning his strength into weakness. Within minutes, the undefeated general was on his knees, his body refusing to obey his commands. "The weak point in your third neural cluster," Lyra explained to the stunned crowd. "Humans discovered it because they had to find every possible advantage. We've had that vulnerability for 1,000,000 years, but never knew because we relied only on strength." She touched specific points on Crone, and feeling returned to his limbs. The general stood slowly, his scales shifting through colors of confusion and something that might have been respect. "What are you?" he asked. "I'm what we could all be," Lyra replied, "if we're willing to learn." That night, in the palace's great hall, Lyra stood before the assembled court. Warriors, scientists, and politicians had come from across the planet. Her father had given her this chance, but she had to seize it herself. "For generations we have believed that might makes right," she began, "that the strong survive and the weak perish. But I stand before you as proof that we don't even understand what strength means." She gestured to Marcus and the other humans in the delegation. "These people can't see in the dark. They have no claws, no redundant organs, no natural armor. By our standards, they shouldn't have survived their own prehistory. Yet they reached the stars. How?" The court listened in uncomfortable silence as she explained. Humans had survived through cooperation, innovation, and adaptation. They turned weaknesses into strengths, obstacles into opportunities. "They have a saying," Lyra continued, "necessity is the mother of invention. We never had necessity because we were born strong. But that made us rigid, unable to change. The galaxy is evolving and we're being left behind." "You would have us become like humans?" a noble called out. "Abandon what makes us Zerathi?" "No," Lyra said firmly. "I would have us become more than we are. Keep our strength, but add their flexibility. Maintain our power, but gain their wisdom. Not replacement, but evolution." To demonstrate, she had brought volunteers from her Earth program. The exhibition that followed changed everything. Zerathi warriors using human techniques defeated opponents twice their size. Human fighters employing Zerathi endurance principles lasted hours in combat. And when they worked together, the results were extraordinary. "This is just combat," Lyra said as the demonstrations ended. "Imagine what we could achieve if we applied this fusion to science, art, philosophy. Imagine Zerathi determination combined with human creativity. We could reshape the galaxy." The debate raged for hours. Traditionalists argued against contaminating their pure culture. Progressives saw the potential for growth. But it was Crone who surprised everyone. "I have been a warrior for 4 centuries, he said, standing despite the lingering effects from their fight. "I thought I knew strength. The princess proved me wrong. If she can teach an old warrior new ways, I will learn." His endorsement swayed many. By dawn, Lyra had permission to establish her school. Not everyone approved, but enough did to make it possible. The Zarathi Training Evolution Center was built on the outskirts of the capital, designed to blend both cultures. Open spaces for meditation, reinforced areas for combat, libraries filled with knowledge from a dozen worlds. It was ambitious, but Lyra had learned to embrace ambition. The first students were volunteers, mostly young Zarathi curious about human ways, and humans brave enough to train on a world where they could barely lift the practice weapons. But word spread quickly, especially after the first graduation ceremony. 20 Zarathi and 20 humans demonstrated what 6 months of integrated training could achieve. They moved like nothing the galaxy had seen, Zarathi with the fluid grace of water, humans with the solid power of mountains. When they sparred, it was less combat than conversation, each movement a word in a language being written as they watched. "How many more are coming?" Marcus asked as they watched the new students arrive. The second class was triple the size of the first. "More than we can handle," Lyra admitted. "We need more teachers, more facilities, more everything." "Growth problems," Grandfather Takahashi observed. He had come to Zirath despite his age, determined to see his students triumph. Good problems to have, but not everyone celebrated their success. Conservative factions on both worlds saw the program as a threat. Purists who believed species should remain separate, that strength came from isolation rather than integration. The attack came at night, during a joint training exercise. Extremists from both species, united in their hatred of change, struck the center with military precision. They expected to find students and teachers unprepared, vulnerable. They found instead the first generation of truly integrated warriors. The attackers moved in traditional patterns, Zarathi using brute force, humans relying on technology. But the students flowed between both styles seamlessly. A human student named David threw a Zarathi terrorist twice his size, then seamlessly transitioned to using a captured plasma weapon. A Zarathi student called Sira combined defensive forms with aggressive strikes, creating openings that didn't exist in either pure style. Lyra coordinated the defense, her 4 arms allowing her to direct multiple groups simultaneously. She had learned leadership not from commanding through fear, but by inspiring through example. "North Wall, Pattern 7, she called out. "South Team, Flowing Water Defense. Center, prepare for Thunderstrike on my mark." The attackers were repelled in minutes, captured rather than killed. It was perhaps the most important victory of the program, proving that strength didn't require destruction. "Why?" Lyra asked the extremist leader, a human who had preached species purity. "What are you so afraid of?" "You're destroying what makes us unique," he spat. "Watering down our strength with alien contamination." "No," said Sira, stepping forward. "She's showing us that our differences make us stronger together. I'm still Zarathi, David's still human, but we're also more." The failed attack had an unexpected effect. Instead of discouraging integration, it proved its worth. Military leaders from both species saw the tactical advantages. Scientists recognized the potential for collaborative breakthroughs. Even artists began exploring fusion forms. Within a year, satellite schools opened on 6 worlds. Each adapted the core principles to local needs, creating new fusion styles. The Aquari combined their water mastery with human swimming techniques, creating underwater combat forms that defied physics. The Aviacs merged their aerial abilities with human pilot training, producing flyers who thought in 3 dimensions. But it was more than combat. The cultural exchange sparked innovations in every field. Zarathi engineers, learning human improvisation, created adaptive technologies. Human doctors, studying Zarathi regeneration, developed new healing techniques. Musicians combined scales and instruments, creating sounds neither species could produce alone. Lyra watched it all with a mixture of pride and humility. She had started something that had grown beyond her imagination. "Did you foresee this?" her father asked during one of his visits to the center. The Emperor had become one of the program's strongest supporters, even training himself in basic human forms. "No," Lyra admitted. "I just wanted to prove I wasn't weak. I never imagined it would become this." "The best changes are often unintended," Vorthak said. "You aimed to save yourself and saved us all instead." The 5th anniversary of the program brought representatives from across the galaxy. What had started as a desperate father sending away his disappointing daughter had become a movement. The integration games showcased the best of all species, competitions that required not just strength, but adaptability, creativity, and cooperation. Lyra stood in the arena, watching a team event where humans, Zarathi, Aquari, and others worked together to overcome challenges no single species could handle alone. They moved as one organism, each bringing unique strengths that complemented the others. "You did this," Marcus said, joining her. He had become Earth's permanent ambassador to the program, his hair now gray from years on Zerath. "You changed the galaxy." "We all did it," Lyra corrected. "I was just the catalyst. Change only works when people are ready for it." A young Zarathi approached nervously. She was small for their species, her scales a pale pink that marked her as different, weak by old standards. "Princess Lyra?" she said hesitantly. "I'm Vera. I've been told I'm too small to be a warrior, too weak, like you were." Lyra knelt, bringing herself to the girl's level. "And what do you think?" "I think—" Vera's scales shifted to gold, the color of determination. "I think strength isn't about size. You proved that. Could you teach me?" "I'll do better," Lyra said. "I'll teach you to teach yourself, to find your own path. Because that's the real secret. There's no one way to be strong." As she enrolled the young Zarathi in the program, Lyra reflected on how far they had all come. The weak princess who couldn't lift a battle blade now lifted entire civilizations. The failed daughter had become the mother of a new age, but the story wasn't over. News arrived of a new threat, a coalition of species who saw the integration movement as weakness to exploit. They were gathering forces, planning to attack while the allied worlds were contaminated by foreign ideas. "They think we've become soft," General Crone reported. He had become one of Lyra's strongest allies, his conversion complete after mastering human techniques. "They plan to strike within the month. Then we'll show them what integrated forces can do," Lyra decided. "Send messages to all the schools. It's time to put our training to the ultimate test." The integration fleet assembled within weeks, ships from dozens of worlds, crews trained in multilateral techniques. Zarathi navigators using human intuition, human gunners with Zarathi targeting systems, Aquari engineers who could think like both. The enemy expected traditional battle lines, species fighting separately with predictable tactics. Instead, they faced something unprecedented. Ships moved in patterns that defied single-species thinking. Attacks came from angles that shouldn't have been possible. Defenses adapted in real time, each ship learning from the others. Lyra commanded from the flagship, her unique perspective allowing her to coordinate actions no single-species commander could conceive. 4 arms moved across control surfaces, processing data streams in ways that merged Zarathi parallel thinking with human intuitive leaps. "Formation 7-7 Alpha," she ordered, "but invert the Aquari position and have the humans lead the feint. Zarathi ships prepare for flowing thunder maneuver." "That's not a real maneuver," an aide protested. "It is now," Lyra replied. "We're writing the book as we go." The battle was decisive. The separatist coalition, locked in traditional thinking, couldn't adapt to opponents who fought like water and stone simultaneously. They were defeated not through superior firepower, but through superior integration. But Lyra surprised everyone with her next decision. Instead of destroying the defeated fleet, she offered them a choice. "Join us," she broadcast. "Learn what we've learned. Become more than you are. Or return home and tell others what you've seen. The galaxy is changing. You can be part of that change or be left behind." Half the enemy fleet accepted integration training on the spot. The other half fled, but with stories of warriors who fought like nothing they had seen before. "You let them go," Crone observed. "The old ways would demand their destruction." "The old ways are why we needed new ways," Lyra replied. "Besides, they'll spread the word. Sometimes the best victory is the one that creates future allies instead of future enemies." The anniversary celebration that year was the largest yet. The integration centers had spread to every major world, each developing unique fusion styles. What had started with one weak princess had become a galactic movement. Lyra stood before the assembled crowds, beings from 100 worlds. She wore the belt Yuki had given her, now accompanied by similar gifts from other species. Each represented a bridge built, a connection made. 10 years ago, my father sent me to Earth because he thought I was a failure," she began. "I thought so too. I believed strength meant being born powerful, that worth was measured in how hard you could hit." She gestured to the mixed crowds, to the integrated warriors, to the children playing together regardless of species. "We've all learned better. Strength isn't what you're born with, it's what you build. It's not about standing alone. It's about standing together. It's not about being unchanging. It's about growing every day." The crowd erupted in celebration, but Lyra wasn't finished. "This is just the beginning," she continued. "We've proven that integration makes us stronger in war. Now let's prove it makes us greater in peace. Let's build schools that teach all subjects through all perspectives. Let's create art that no single species could imagine. Let's explore the galaxy not as separate tribes, but as one people with beautiful differences." In the palace that night, Emperor Vorthak found his daughter on the same balcony where he had made his fateful decision to send her away. "Any regrets?" he asked. "Only that it took us so long to start," Lyra replied. "How many centuries did we waste believing in limitations that didn't exist?" "But we started," Vorthak said. "Thanks to you, the weak princess who became the strongest of us all." "Not the strongest," Lyra corrected gently. "Just the first to admit I needed to learn." "That's all strength really is, the courage to grow." As they watched the celebration continue below, fighters from different worlds training together, children playing games that merged a dozen cultures, Lyra smiled. The timid princess was gone, but she had left behind something infinitely more valuable. She had left behind proof that anyone could become unstoppable if they were willing to learn, to change, to see strength not as a birthright, but as a choice. And in a galaxy full of beings making that choice, anything was possible. The human phrase echoed in her mind. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. She had become living proof of that truth, and through her, the galaxy had learned it too. The weak princess hadn't just become strong, she had redefined what strength meant for everyone. And that revolution had only just begun. In training centers across the galaxy, new students arrived daily. Some were naturally powerful, others considered weak by their species. But all were welcome, all had something to teach and learn. The integration movement had become unstoppable, not through force, but through a simple truth. We are stronger together than we ever were apart. And somewhere in the Takahashi dojo on Earth, Grandfather smiled as he read Lyra's latest letter. His student had surpassed the teacher, as all good students should. But more than that, she had taken his simple lessons about water and stone and transformed them into something that would reshape civilization itself. Flow like water, he murmured to his new class, a mix of human and alien students. Strike like stone, but most importantly, be like Lyra. Be willing to become more than you were born to be. The legend of the princess who was given to humans had spread to every corner of known space. But it wasn't a legend of conquest or power. It was a legend of transformation, of potential realized, of strength found in the most unexpected places. And it was only the beginning.